Donald Trump just flipped the script. He's not aiming at Chi anymore. He's gunning for Jerome Powell. He's calling for rate cuts and saying the Fed chair's termination can't come soon enough. Elizabeth Warren is also sounding the alarm. When they're hosting her on CNBC, you know the legacy system is cooked. And it's not just the deep state. Even Scott Bessent is telling Trump to chill. And the market, it's cracking. The VIX just hit levels we've only seen in 2000, 2008, and 2020. But here's the twist that normies are missing. Bitcoin is moving differently. It's breaking away from risk assets. It's trading much less like a tech stock and more like a macro hedge. Something big is shifting, and we're going to break it down today. This is Dante Cook with Bitcoin Simply. Let's go. When Lynn Alden speaks, I listen.
If I imagine a scenario that brings us to very high prices this calendar year, it would probably be because some massive liquidity unlock happened. Like, let's say the U.S. bond market broke, the Fed came in and basically did yield curve control or kind of QE that they don't really want to be doing, or some sort of big treasury operation twist sort of thing. It would probably take something like that combined with some sort of de-escalation of tariffs. So I never really rule out what Bitcoin's doing. I look at a couple of things. One is I think liquidity is probably going to be somewhat favorable for the rest of the year. And two, if you look at certain valuation metrics, I like to look at the market cap to realized cap ratio, which is market capitalization compared to the average on-chain cost basis. And this current consolidation has taken off a lot of the hype around it. So if you look at the prior consolidation, so Bitcoin reached 73,000 in March 2024. That ratio got a little bit elevated. So it wasn't elevated to the point of prior multi-year tops, but it was a little bit heated. And so after about a 7-month consolidation, it pretty much worked off all of that excessive valuation, that excessive hype, kind of allowed the market to consolidate. Then when it jumped to 108K, it kind of reached similar frothy levels. And so the fact that we've been consolidating for several months, not particularly surprising. I think we worked off a lot of that valuation already. So I think we're at a pretty strong foundation to at least start building from, especially once we get past maybe near-term stock market shocks and things like that.
Lynn just laid out a few reasons why Bitcoin could break out this year. 1, Fed intervention. 2, de-escalation on tariffs, both of which are signals that we're seeing right now. I'm going to walk you through why the Fed is likely to intervene and why we're going to see de-escalation in tariff markets. The market is already signaling a Fed intervention. Where am I finding this? The VIX. The VIX is signaling a market reset. Look at this chart. Whenever you get the triple spike or 3 peaks above a certain level or a VIX above 60, you're not just seeing panic in the markets. You're seeing the market's inability to price what's going to happen next. And every time that this happens, 2000, 2008, 2020, 2023, you don't just see a small shock in the markets. You see a monetary reset. And the reason why the VIX is exploding right now is because Donald Trump just called for the termination of the Fed Chair Jerome Powell.
Mr. President, on Jerome Powell, you said that the termination of Jerome Powell cannot come fast enough. He says he won't leave even if you ask him to.
Oh, he'll leave. If I ask him to, he'll be out of there. But I don't think he's doing the job. He's too late, always too late, a little slow, and I'm not happy with him. I let him know it, and if I want him out, he'll be out of there real fast, believe me. Yeah, go ahead.
And Jerome Powell has subtly been clapping back.
The level of tariff increases announced so far is significantly larger than anticipated, and the same is likely to be true of the economic effects, which will include higher inflation and slower growth.
Jerome Powell and Donald Trump got more beef than Dillon Brooks and Draymond Green. But despite the beefs, Jerome Powell just signaled exactly what he's going to do to combat the tariffs and the high inflation and uncertainty in the markets. Maintain price stability.
Tariffs are highly likely to generate at least a temporary rise in inflation. The inflationary effects could also be more persistent. Avoiding that outcome will depend on the size of the effects, on how long it takes for them to pass through fully to prices, and ultimately on keeping longer-term inflation expectations well anchored. Our obligation is to keep longer-term inflation expectations well anchored and to make certain that a one-time increase in the price level does not become an ongoing inflation problem. As we act to meet that obligation, we will balance our maximum employment and price stability mandates, keeping in mind that without price stability, we cannot achieve the long periods of strong labor market conditions that benefit all Americans.
Oh, and Donald Trump did also just signal that there could be a de-escalation with tariffs, saying that we could reach a very good deal with China in the very near term.
Why not pick up the phone and call him and make a deal?
Oh, we're going to make a deal. We'll have a deal. I think we're going to make a very good deal with China.
Do you plan to reach out to him and call him?
I think that you will see we'll make a very good deal with China.
Regardless of what happens first, the Fed intervening or the de-escalation of tariffs, both are good for Bitcoin. And on the flip side, it's very obvious that the global financial markets cannot survive without the Fed intervening. You know the markets are cooked when Senator Warren goes on CNBC to make a pitch for Jerome Powell staying in his chair.
But I really want to make a pitch here for a second about the importance of Powell staying in his job. Look,
and it's unusual coming from you. You're very critical of him.
I have tangled with him on a regular basis about both regulations and interest rates. But understand this. If Chairman Powell can be fired by the President of the United States, it will crash the markets in the United States. The infrastructure that keeps this stock market strong and therefore a big part of our economy strong and therefore a big part of the world economy strong is the idea that the big pieces move independent of the politics, that somebody is making his, their, her best decisions economically and independently. We understand that if the New York Stock Exchange, if interest rates in the United States are subject to a president who just wants to wave his magic wand, this doesn't distinguish us then from any other two-bit dictatorship around the world where everyone knows what your big investment risk is. Will that dictator wake up in the morning and have a tummy ache and decide to cause this problem or favor that friend? That's why we need to strengthen the infrastructure.
But I know
The craziest thing that no one is paying attention to right now is Bitcoin is trading much less like a tech stock and more like a sovereign neutral reserve asset. But before we get to that, let's get to our sponsors. One of the ways that you can become sovereign is by buying Bitcoin. We talk about that all the time here on this show. One of the ways that you stay sovereign is by never selling your Bitcoin. And that's why we've partnered with Ledn, the leader in Bitcoin-backed loans, which allow you to unlock liquidity in your Bitcoin without selling your Bitcoin. Ledn has issued over $9 billion worth of loans and has over 1,000 five-star customer reviews. You can trust what they say, and they do, because they are one of the first digital lenders to do a proof of reserves. Your Bitcoin is held in cold storage and custodied in a secure and safe place. They've never lost a single sat or sent their customer money. Loans start at 12.4%. Go to learn.ledn.io/simply to get started on your Bitcoin-backed lending journey today. That's learn.ledn.io/simply. One of the ways that you can remove yourself from all the calamity in markets and sleep well is by removing your Bitcoin from exchanges, like Coinbase, which just rugged a bunch of users with its base protocol. And one of the ways that you can learn how to remove your keys from third-party exchanges confidently, privately, securely, safely is by working with a coach. And that's exactly what the Bitcoin Way does. They give you a Bitcoin coach to walk through your self-custody journey the right way. Go to thebitcoinway.com/simplybitcoin to get a free 30-minute consultation with their team today. Luke Roman has this great chart that he's been looking at recently where he looks at Bitcoin over the NDX or the NASDAQ, showing that Bitcoin is not trading like a tech stock anymore. It's decoupling from the Mag 7 and trading like a sovereign neutral reserve asset. When I see tweets like these, videos like this from Larry Fink live rent-free in my head.
And also, I do believe the role of crypto is it's digitizing gold in many ways. Instead of investing in gold as a hedge against inflation, a hedge against the onerous problems of any one country, or the devaluation of your currency, whatever country you're in. Let's be clear. Bitcoin is an international asset. It's not based on any one currency. And so it can represent an asset that people can play as an alternative.
Bitcoin is a hedge, an international asset. Bitcoin represents a shift in how sovereign nations protect themselves against uncertainty in markets. Foreign nations will no longer invest in stocks like they did in previous years because of how politicized they've become. And that's why I believe that the U.S. will begin the buying Bitcoin frenzy globally. And the sky is the limit.
If the United States announces that we are buying 1 million Bitcoin, that's just a global seismic shock, right? I think that really is a big deal. I think first, the Bitcoin price goes through the roof, right? I think we probably go very quickly to something like $1 million per Bitcoin. And then you have to wait and see what are the sort of dominoes to fall from that, right? What are the second order effects of Bitcoin just being monetized on a faster trajectory than I think a lot of people anticipate?
Even Bitcoin OG Adam Back just talked about the game theory.
If the US does the strategic Bitcoin reserve in a more aggressive way in terms of putting in a program to buy 1 million Bitcoin over 5 years, which is one of the ideas, that will be a whole new ballgame, because then, the other sovereigns, the other countries will have to decide tactically how they respond to that. Yeah. I think it's not something they can ignore, because, it's very hard for a country to quietly buy Bitcoin. A prop trading firm or a macro trader with private money, they can quietly build a position. But a country can't, due to the oversight of different branches of government. So that news itself would start, another game theory where governments are bidding against each other for Bitcoin. So I think that just brings a whole new price regime.
The crazy thing about this whole calamity that we're seeing in markets is people aren't selling their Bitcoin. Only 9.6 of Bitcoin addresses are at a loss or not in profit, meaning 90% of people who are buying Bitcoin are in the money. This represents a solid base which could fuel a move higher at any moment. And this is a cool chart from the Simply team. People are looking at the all-time highs, but not looking that every single year, Bitcoin is improving its all-time lows. And you need to look at Bitcoin and not other cryptos like ETH. Ever since the flip from proof of work to proof of stake, Bitcoin has Eddie Guerrero'd ETH off the top ladder.
Edge's head, remember the concussion, being banged off the top of that ladder. Eddie Guerrero! Oh my God!
Bitcoin is literally sunset flip powerbombed ETH, as ETH is down 74% since the switch. Orbase, a protocol promoted by Coinbase, which just rug pulled all of its users. I don't know when people are going to learn. Cryptos aren't for everyone. They're for insiders, and you're the exit liquidity. Do the simple thing. Global markets are shifting, and they're looking at Bitcoin as a replacement for tech stocks. The VIX is telling you that the market is pricing in a major event, a major restructuring, and major capital flows that are about to be redistributed back out into the market. Are you going to make the simple trade, or are you going to overcomplicate things? Just buy Bitcoin. Pretty simple. One of the ways that you can remove yourself from all of the noise in the world is by coming and hanging out with Bitcoiners. And there's no better place to do that than by coming to Las Vegas from May 27th through May 29th to the largest Bitcoin conference in the world. There's going to be 20 to 30,000 people at that conference this year. You're not going to want to miss it. And you might be able to get cool Simply merch like this if you come too. Use the promo code SIMPLY at b.tc/conference/2025 for 10% off. That's the promo code SIMPLY. We got you hooked up. I hope that everybody has a good Friday. And for all of you creasers out there who only go to church on Christmas and Easter, I'm glad you're making it for the first time this year. This is Dante Cook with Bitcoin Simply. Happy stacking.